Hello and welcome to Make Your App a Product, our Ask Me Anything session with the TFX. I'm Robert Crowe, developer engineer with the TFX team, and I'll let everyone introduce themselves. Anusha?
Hi, I'm Anusha, product manager for TFX. Very excited to be here and answer any questions about TFX.
Hi, I'm Zhitao. I'm a tech lead manager of TFX. It's happy to be here and share this great machine learning product with you here.
Hi, I'm Kaz. Thank you. I'm developer advocate from Google Cloud Teams. I'd like to answer to any questions about Vertex AI and how you can apply the MLOps practice with it.
Okay, let's get started. Well, we have a first question here. This is why or when would I want to use TFX? Anusha, you want to take that?
Sure, a great question to get started with. So if you're looking to do production ML, TFX is kind of the right platform to start thinking about. And let's talk a bit about what production ML is. Typically, when you start thinking about a model, the focus is always on the modeling code. But the moment you want to deploy this as a product, that's pretty much the title of this session, making your app into a product at the scale that you want to deploy. You want to start thinking about like, how do you ingest your data? How do you validate your data? And then post training your model, you want to think about how do you evaluate your model so that you can deploy this safely in production. So TFX as a platform provides you with suite of tools to do exactly this in a seamless and automated manner. So anybody who's thinking about production ML, you've come to the right spot here.
Okay, that's great. All right, let's move to our next question. Who uses TFX? Is this only for big enterprises? Anusha, why don't you take that one too?
Sure. So TFX started out by providing ML infrastructure for many of our Alphabet users. In fact, several of the popular products that you see today, for their ML infrastructure needs, production needs, they use TFX internally. And then we open source TFX so that our community can get benefited by this. And this is also available on GCP. We think that TFX can be used by large enterprises as well as small startups alike. Anybody who wants to start thinking about setting up their ML infrastructure right from day one, TFX is like the right place to get started with.
Yes, and I think we have a lot of people using it currently, so that's been a good experience. Let's go ahead and move to our next question. Can I run TFX on Google Cloud? Kaz, you want to take that?
Sure. So because the TFX is the open source tool, you can easily install the library on any environment you can run on the Google Cloud, such as you can use the Google Compute Engine as a VM for running your Python environment, or you can use the Vertex notebook, which is a cloud version of the Jupyter Notebook. So you can just use the TFX libraries on that. And also, I should mention that with the Vertex pipelines, you can easily integrate the TFX components combined with the Kubeflow pipelines and the Kubeflow pipeline components, so that you can get the functionality of TFX components, such as the TensorFlow data validation, combined with all the MLOps product offering from the Vertex AI.
That's great. Thanks, Kaz. For those of you watching, I just want to remind you, if you have questions, please enter them, and the team will try to answer them. And let's move on to our next question here. Does TFX run on Kubernetes? Zhitao, do you want to take that?
Yes, I'm happy to. So yes, TFX runs on Kubernetes. This is done by two elements of the solution. First, TFX offers officially supported Docker image, which help us to containerize both our components on all the necessary bits which needs to run Kubernetes with a supported way. Second is TFX integrates well with a project called Kubeflow Pipelines, which enables machine learning pipelines to be run on Kubernetes. With these two solutions combined, we can both TFX components and the user author pipelines can be run smoothly on Kubernetes.
That sounds great. Kubernetes is a great system to use for containerization. Let's move on to our next question. And again, if you're out there watching, please feel free to enter your questions too. How easy is it to use TFX, and how do I get started? Anusha, why don't you take that?
Sure. We have improved, we've taken user feedback, and over time we have worked on improving our onboarding and tutorial material so that users can start with TFX easily. So we have what we call as TFX tutorials or guide section, which you can check out in the tensorflow.org website. And as part of this, we provide like a simple way through Colabs for you to just get started with a very simple workflow of ingesting your data and then training a model, and then slowly adding in more components like data validation, model evaluation, and so on. So these tutorials are a good starting point for you to explore TFX.
That's great. And actually, that dovetails nicely with our next question. How can I use TFX for natural language processing or NLP? Anusha?
Yeah, sure. I'll share my few cents on this and would love if Zhitao can also probably pitch in here. So for TFX previously used to be great for structured or tabular data. And increasingly, we saw that many of our users were asking for examples of how do you do NLP in production? How does like an ML platform even function for NLP in production? So that motivated us to start thinking about what kind of support we need to add. And as a starting point, we started publishing some examples of how do you take like a pre-trained BERT model and fine tune it according to your needs. So that was the first step towards like transfer learning and taking your TensorFlow hub model. Now, we are very excited to announce that as part of this IO launch, we have also improved our data validation libraries so that we can better validate our text-based data that users are going to bring into the platform. Happy for any of you to pitch in to see what other features you'd like to talk about.
Yes, I'll pitch a bit more. So in addition to that, there's also some recent examples about adding more features in feature transformation stages and data validation stage about natural language processing to better improve users' understanding and the manipulation on the vocabularies, for example. Those work are already available on our GitHub repos as examples. So feel free to check them out in case that helps your machine learning workflow. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we've also added metrics for natural language, the blue and rouge metrics, which really help you, measure the performance of your model. So that's important for natural language. Okay, great. Let's move on to our next question here. Can TFX deploy other models besides TensorFlow models? Who wants to take that?
I will start here. So yes, TFX can deploy other models, other model types than TensorFlow models. So TFX has a component called Pusher, which helps our users to deploy their models to other serving platforms. Mostly, Pusher handles models as an opaque payload and pushes models to either file systems or external APIs. So in this process, TFX does not really assume how much the model is TensorFlow or some other formats. In fact, I believe we have examples of pushing models trained from sklearn to other training services, including some prediction service offered by Vertex AI. So those examples should be on our GitHub, which can be checked out.
That's great. I know the scikit-learn example has been really popular. Again, for those of you out there watching, please feel free to enter your questions, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. Let me move to the next one. can I move my TFX pipeline to a different compute environment? Zhitao, why don't you take that one?
Sure. So TFX has been designed with the portability as a first principle in mind when we started the open source journey. So because we are built on top of some other project which offers the portability primitive, like projects like Docker, Kubernetes, TensorFlow, we are able to port our workflow to different environments. So TFX, like I explained in the past, TFX integrates the Kubeflow pipelines, so we can run on Kubernetes. In addition to that, we also have local DAG runners, which can help users to run TFX pipelines completely locally on workstations and also inside Jupyter Notebook. And also TFX integrates very well with the Vertex AI, like Kaz mentioned. So GCP users can have a well-supported environment to run TFX inside.
Great. So let's see. Let's move on to our next question. Is TFX different from Kubeflow, or is TFX an upgrade version from Kubeflow? I think I could start us off on that. TFX actually runs on top of Kubeflow if you're running in a containerized environment, although TFX runs in many other environments as well. So it's a higher level abstraction. It's more ML focused than Kubeflow is. Kubeflow is more focused towards containerized runtimes and workloads. And I'll just open it up if anyone wants to add to that. No? Okay. Let's move on to our next question. What is TFX 1.0? Well, probably or hopefully you're aware by now. We're just announcing 1.0 at I/O. Zhitao, you want to tell us what TFX 1.0 is?
Yes. So as Anusha mentioned, we have many users who are already using TFX, and they are using TFX for their critical machine learning workload runs in production. We recognize that there's a need about stable API and the compatible artifact definitions for these users. So TFX 1.0 is the first post-beta release of TFX, which we just announced for I/O. In this release, we will provide a stable public API and the definition for all the artifacts being passed around within our components. So using TFX 1.0 and the V1 public API, TFX users can write their pipelines and with a guarantee that all their pipelines are going to work within the entire 1.x release stream. Also, we are going to provide critical bug fixes and the security patches for the next 3 years, as mentioned by our senior director in previous keynotes.
Great. Okay, let's move on to our next question. Is TFX well suited to research, or is it only intended for taking models from research to production? I think I could start us off on that. It's probably going to depend on which kind of research you're doing. If you're just doing pure research that you'd never intend to move to production, then TFX certainly is useful if you're working with large amounts of data that you need to distribute across a cluster, or large models that you may want to do distributed processing for, because it gives you a framework to manage those kinds of distributed processing in a repeatable way, and repeatability is, of course, important, not just for production, but for research as well. But if you're planning on taking the thing that you're working on in research and moving it into production at some point, it's especially important to start in a structured environment like a TFX pipeline, so that when you make that transition, you have as few points of breakage as possible. So that's the advice that I try to give people on that question. But I'll let others chime in.
I can maybe add a couple of points here. So this is also a very common kind of use case internally at Google, where many teams, they start with like researching or experimenting on a particular kind of model architecture. And then after a point of time, they'll try to kind of take that to production. So I would say that, over time, TFX has evolved to be quite flexible. As you can see, we have custom components and ability for you to bring in your own binaries or containers. So if you're starting out for research, you can start out very simple. And that's why we've kind of revamped our tutorial so that you can start out with a very simple kind of workflow that makes sense for your research and experimentation kind of workloads. And then as you're trying to graduate this workload to production, you can start adding some of the off-the-shelf or standard components that we provide. So I would say that TFX is actually at a very good juncture at this point where you can start with a very flexible and small kind of workflow and slowly start graduating that to production because of the flexibility that we provide.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's move to our next question. And again, if you're out there watching, please feel free to add your questions as well, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. Can I use something other than TensorFlow for my model in TFX? Well, yes, you can, and many people do. But Anusha, you want to add some comments?
I think Zhitao gave a fantastic answer here on how we already have this capability. So maybe my 2 cents here is that you can just train pretty much anything that you want to do in TFX, because as I said, we have these custom components that you can use to build whatever pipeline or workflow that you'd like to do. And many of the standard components that we provide, off-the-shelf components that we provide, are pretty much framework agnostic. Many components, not all, but many of these components are framework agnostic. So even if you want to start including them earlier, that's also possible. And we've launched TFX add-ons, which Robert can speak to more, where we are encouraging contributions from community on how you can train scikit-learn or XGBoost style models. And we are receiving a lot of interest from community members towards that. So hopefully you'll start seeing more examples on how you can train other types of models in TFX.
Yes, to add some more about the custom components part, we recognize that user needs to bring their own code into the machine learning pipelines, not only for training their models, but also often to integrate their other systems that they have, some proprietary, some other open source projects. So TFX provides 2 ways of providing custom components for the user. One is people can easily bring a Python callable or function, and the TFX will help to package the function into a callable and run it in all the supported environments, including local, in Docker containers and on Kubernetes, as well as Vertex AI. The second is user can also bring in their Docker image as the binary, and inside that they can even wrap non-Python binaries. And again, TFX help to bring that as a component in our pipeline and integrate that with either other custom components or TFX first-party components. Now, getting back to other framework part, we recognize that machine learning in production often involves 2 high-level parts. One is training the model, and the second is prediction. TFX supports deploying models to prediction services using Pusher, and we also support training of other models, training of other model types in our pipeline. One thing to note is that we're actually seeing workflows which makes different kinds of high-level training APIs, even in TensorFlow, like Keras or Estimator. And it's also possible to, for instance, compare that with a model training sklearn, even in the same pipeline. All the different models can be wrapped in different trainers, and they will be processing the same data set. This is one of the very, very convenient way for users to compare performance of different training algorithms or different model types.
Yeah, and TFX, of course, runs on Vertex AI as well. And Kaz, you want to tell us about support for other frameworks on Vertex AI?
Sure. So the Vertex AI provides a different managed services, includes the Vertex pipeline, which is announced recently, which allows you to run the Kubeflow pipelines environment as the serverless the service. So you don't. In the past, there has been a product called AI Platform Pipelines, which runs on top of the Google GKE, Google Kubernetes engine. But the feedback we got from the customers is that it's quite pricey. It's it costs so much for running the VM virtual machines, just for running the pipelines. So based on that feedback, we turned everything into serverless. So now the data scientists or ops engineers don't have to think about creating their VM instances. Instead, they just initiate the pipeline executions based on the Kubeflow pipelines, combined with the TFX component you want to use to build the production MLOps pipeline.
Okay, great. Well, let's move to our next question. TFX can work with Airflow, right? Is that true? Zhitao, why don't you take that?
Yes. So yes, TFX can use with Airflow. This is actually one of the first system we're starting to integrate in open source. So I believe the Airflow-based tutorial is available in our first ever publicly release almost 2 years ago at this point. So in fact, some of our most advanced partners are still using TFX over Airflow, because Airflow as a advanced and complex system offers a lot of advanced customization points for those users, especially if they need to deploy TFX in their own customized environment.
Yeah, we have actually quite a few customers using Airflow with TFX. Airflow is a popular environment to run in. Okay. Well, again, if you're out there listening, please feel free to enter your questions, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. This is an Ask Me Anything, so feel free to ask us anything. We'll try to answer. Okay. And if you're interested in learning more about TFX, you can go to our website. It's tensorflow.org/TFX. And as Anusha mentioned, we do have the TFX add-ons community group now. It's a special interest group. You can find that on the TFX website, or go to GitHub under TensorFlow. It's the TFX add-ons repo in TensorFlow. And of course, we have our YouTube channel. Please check it out, including some of the videos from I/O that we've just sent out. And there's the TFX mailing list too, as well, and group. So you can join that as well. It's tfx@tensorflow.org. So if there's no more questions, we can go ahead and wrap it up. I know we're all really excited about TFX 1.0. It's been a big step forward, and I really want to thank the whole team. They've been making a real push here in the last few months to pull everything together and make it as good as possible. Here's one more question. Did we lose it? There we go. Please provide the first step tutorial for us. Anusha, you want to talk about getting started and some of the tutorials that we have?
Are they specifically asking for a link, which we can probably share later? In terms of the tutorials, we have a section, so you can go to tensorflow.org/TFX. And then I think under getting started, we have a tutorial section. And there we have published a set of Colab style tutorials where, you can first start with a very simple kind of workflow where you just ingest data, train your model, and kind of push your model. And then you can slowly start adding data validation. So we have several off-the-shelf components, as I mentioned before, which basically you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Instead, use these components for doing any kind of feature pre-processing or any kind of data pre-processing that you'd like to do. And then we also have components for evaluation of your model at scale, what we call as evaluator. Then each of these tutorials talk about how you can incrementally start adding these components to the initial workflow that you set up. And these are all pretty much like Colab style, so it's easy for you to just follow, try them up, and we're looking actually for feedback to see how you kind of find these tutorials. We are pretty excited about them.
And I also would like to add that I surprised to see that TFX teams did a great job on making everything Vertex AI ready on the simple codes. So you can easily maybe try out with the Colab at first. Maybe you can choose to use the Vertex AI environments to try the TFX as well.
Yeah, that's a great point that Kaz mentioned. We also have, if you're feeling more explorative, we also have tutorials on how you can start running this in Vertex AI environment. And we're continuing to add more tutorials there. So that's also in the tutorial section.
Yeah, Vertex AI has been exciting, and it's been great to watch the announcements at I/O. So I think together, TFX and Vertex AI will be a big step forward, and we're really looking forward to seeing what people do with it. By the way, if you do build things on TFX, we'd love to hear about it. So please contact us through TFX at TensorFlow.org or join the special interest group and tell us about what you're doing, because we know there's a lot of great stuff that we've already seen and heard about from people that has been really exciting, and that's fun for us to hear about that. All right, let's see. Do we have any other questions? Again, if you have questions, please feel free to enter them, and we'll try to answer them. But if not, I think we could probably call it a little early. Is there a question coming in? Not clear. Yeah, why don't we call it a little early? Oh, no, there's a question. Okay. All right, let's try that one. So, what are or can be the advantages of using TFX over Databricks? Let's see. Zhitao, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'll try. So I don't have that much of experience myself of comparing TFX with Databricks here yet, but some opinionated advantage I can think of is that one, TFX offers a list of components which we try to making sure they integrate very well with each other, and we try to making sure the classical simple machine learning workflow can be modeled easily with them. The second is TFX is designed to work very well for both local users and GCP users. So I think this could be one of the advantages which can help users who get started of using it. This is what I can think of right now. Feel free to add anything.
Well, there's sort of a question of style too. I think if you're coming from a Spark environment and you're familiar and comfortable in that, Databricks is probably a fine choice. But if you're coming from maybe a more neural network oriented environment and TensorFlow is more familiar to you, then I'd encourage you to take a look at TFX and some of the advantages that we do offer. And portability, of course, is a big one of those. You can run it in a lot of different places and not just on a Spark cluster. So, Databricks is fine, but I guess maybe I'm a little partial. I sort of prefer TFX.
Yeah, I can mention that recently Google Cloud has a strategic deal with the Databricks, and I don't know what would be the actual solutions we would provide, where the data cloud would be, what kind of role Google Cloud would be playing as a platform for the Databricks. So maybe in the future we can expect to have some kind of the overall solution where maybe you can have the migration from the Databricks environment to the Google Cloud environment, and maybe you can start integrating with the newer environment of components like TFX or the Vertex AI components, maybe in the future.
I just want to probably reiterate what Zhitao said. That's like a very important point. We've invested a lot in building many of these off-the-shelf components, which definitely will take a lot of pressure having to reinvent the wheel when you're starting with building any kind of ML workflow. And I would say, as we are continuing to make it better for NLP and more like, as Robert said, like TensorFlow and more of deep learning style use cases, I really think that that's where, some of the competitive advantage for TFX lies.
I should really point out that that TFX does run on Apache Beam, which does run on Spark. So if you do have Spark resources that you want to leverage, you can run TFX there as well. And I think we're getting just about to the end of our time. So I really appreciate, thanks for coming, everyone, worldwide, wherever you are. It's been great. And thanks very much to our team, too. It's actually middle of the night where many of us are, but it's been great to be with you. And thanks very much for coming.